Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted to introduce everyone to the OPA Retreat that's going to take place in one of the most beautiful places in the United States, Zion National Park in Utah. And we have a very, beautiful theme this time, bridging science and spirituality, especially as we're moving towards Jupiter, Saturn in Aquarius. And it's very much about the need to balance, the two hemispheres of our brain. And astrology really captures both the science and the spirituality. So the retreat consists of two parts, and we're going to focus now on the first part, which is April 23 to 26 to 2020. And what happens in the first part is that participants select one track that they are going to spend about 10 to 12 hours in the course of 3 days. And it's in an intimate group, so it's maximum 12 people per track. Along with that, you're going to also attend general presentations, short presentations. For example, about the theme of science and spirituality, there's going to be a talk about the draconic chart, about research and astrology, and about how to find spiritual themes, spiritual identificator in the natal chart. And one of our track leaders is here, Laura Nalbandian from Seattle. And we're very pleased to have you on the faculty because you're always known for bringing deep knowledge, but make it very accessible. And it's that combination of being grounded as a good Capricorn and also bringing new insights, maybe because you have Uranus on the ascendant, if I remember, right?
Yes, I do. I'm wearing my little Uranus token here on my necklace.
So
yes, I have Uranus on the ascendant. It's good. I need it.
The track that you're presenting is about Uranus, and I'm having here a short description. Our soul incarnating to the physical world, we are challenged in every way to grow and evolve, to break free, to liberate from the pattern and complexes of the past. The process of individuation and evolution can and does take its toll, and the soul carries the scar and traumas into each lifetime with the intention of liberating from these scars as well. During the 3 days, we will explore Uranus through the houses, but also look at other trauma signatures in the chart, including aspects to Uranus and strong Aquarius or 11th house themes, as well as the transits of Uranus to the natal chart.
Right.
So, why did you choose Uranus?
Well, there's actually a lot of really interesting reasons about this. Recently, actually for the last 10 years, as a side note, I don't want to get into it too much. I have been coordinating a non-astrology conference for these last 10 years. It's a public health conference here in the state of Washington. And I have noticed over the course of the last 2 years, what is rising in the public health arena is trauma signatures, trauma-informed work, that public health workers are starting to turn their focus towards the concepts of trauma and how trauma then informs a life and illness and all sorts of physical manifestations and also societal manifestations. Also, I've been noticing these memes as you look on Facebook or whether it's Instagram, and also articles that have been going by about how trauma is being linked to addiction, meaning that addictive patterns that people are playing out can be directly traced to trauma. Now, what's different about what I'm going to do is where these two concepts that I just mentioned, addiction linked to trauma and in public health, how they're really coming to understand how trauma is informing public health. That's a trauma. These are traumas in childhood. These are childhood traumas and here and present. What I'm going to really focus on is how each and every soul may carry in with it karmic trauma, past life trauma. And I will be talking about what I call karmic PTSD. I used to make a joke out of it, but it's not a joke. I actually see it as very real, that we get triggered by events, small and large, in our lives, by people that trigger us back to karma of the past life karma. And what the body and the emotional body does, the physical body, the emotional body, and even the mental body does, it gets triggered as if that event were in fact happening in the here and now. And so all the physiological, emotional, and intellectual responses go with it. So in this workshop, well, to really answer your question, I find trauma to be a significant factor in the natal chart, how we emotionally or not emotionally connect with others in our lives. And I think that a tremendous amount of self-awareness, self-knowledge, and towards ourselves, certainly by looking at our chart from that perspective, and also as an astrologer, helping our clients understand where the trauma triggers are and the trauma signatures are, and hopefully become more aware of them.
Okay, so I understand. I mean, I know you for many years. You practice mostly evolutionary astrology.
Yes.
So that's going to be the orientation,
Yes.
Understanding the soul journey through that theme. Now, the question that is interesting, you speak about, you know, the trauma obviously being such a nucleus, you know, an issue that can affect so many other aspects of our life. Why Uranus specifically? I mean, Pluto can traumatize. Saturn, you know, is usually the bad guy. What do you, why, how do you bring the Uranus aspect to it?
Well, Uranus represents a very particular type of trauma. It's the type of trauma that is served up in a sort of, experienced in a shocking, out of the blue manner that is completely unexpected. We're blindsided by it. And in that experience, the emotional body and intellectual body, but mostly an emotional body, detaches itself from the experience as a survival mechanism to the trauma at hand. And so when the soul has experienced a particular style of trauma or a type of trauma through a number of lifetimes, that learned experience of detachment is carried into this lifetime. So that depending on the severity, the intensity of the trauma, you may get varying degrees of emotional disengagement, emotional detachment, and even going into attachment pattern problems, meaning people having a difficult time emotionally connecting with other people because they have been traumatized. And this we can see in current life trauma of children who have attachment problems. So I'm not going to talk about this lifetime trauma. I'm not trained to deal with childhood, you know, I'm not a therapist. So I'm very clear on that. But I can certainly address karmic trauma and strategies for how we can do the work to heal. And what the soul, Uranus represents the soul's attempt to break free from patterns that have been deeply conditioned and ingrained. And when humans and souls get caught into patterns or caught into ruts or these patterns, there's a habitual nature, and we derive comfort from staying in those patterns. So it often, invariably, takes a shock to the system, some kind of event that will shock the consciousness, the soul, and so on, to break out of its sort of sleeping addictive pattern. And so yeah, go ahead.
So what I'm hearing you say is, we identify the possible fracture there, but also work on solutions.
Absolutely. I am all about solution.
And that's where the current life chart can help us.
Absolutely. I'm not interested directly in just focusing on the past. My main focus is this lifetime and how we live a functional, healthy, supportive life.
I'm just interrupting you quickly just to bring things on the plate, because I actually had a conversation this week with an astrologer who was mentioning that evolutionary astrologers tend to, dwell in the past, and it's important to, to bring this into the current context. So I'm wondering,
absolutely,
if transits, current transits of Uranus play a role in that.
I believe so. So there's two things. One is identifying the patterns of the past, and then asking the question. I ask internally the question of myself as I'm looking at a chart. What is it that this person can do in this lifetime to evolve this pattern forward in a healthy way, so they're not repeating the patterns of the past and re-traumatizing their consciousness and their soul? Okay. Number two, I'm looking at the transits of Uranus. I'm also looking at the transits to the placements in the chart, Uranus itself, or if somebody has a strong Aquarius signature somewhere, might be in the fourth house, might be the moon in Aquarius, or so to transits to those planets in Aquarius that would speak of opportunities for them to do the work to re-engage and deal with the traumas of the past. And what I mean by that is that this soul is to understand, first of all, is to understand the intent of the process. The intent of the process is not to traumatize. That's not the intention. The intention is to liberate. The intention is to evolve and grow and to become more authentically who you are. So that, so I don't, it's not about focusing on the trauma. It's about focusing on what the soul is trying to get to. What is that individual? What will they need to get to as a more authentic human being? So that can be in the natal chart, as well as looking at the transits to those points in the natal chart and the transit of Uranus itself.
So people will be working on their own charts, but then they can apply this to their clients if they do readings.
Right.
So it's both personal and it's a tool they can use, especially in consultations. It's so important to heal the wounds, not just to identify them.
Right. I'm not interested in just naming them, although naming them has a power in and of itself. As clients do say to me, "Oh my God, wow, you framed that in such a way that I've never thought about before, or never really connected it in that way." And naming it has its own power, right? But only so much. After a bit, once you've named it, now what do you do with it? And so we'll be also looking at, so at NORWAC this year, I did for the very first time, I talked about trauma signatures, emotional trauma signatures. So we'll definitely be looking at Uranus and aspect to other planets, whether it's the moon, dealing with emotional, specifically identified emotional trauma, or whether it's to Saturn, and we're dealing with trauma to our sense of authority, responsibility, our social identity, and so on. Any number of planets where Uranus might be an aspect, or challenging, or stressful, or hard, whatever word you want to use, aspect to another planet.
And so, just on as quick, a note, I don't know if there is such a thing, but if you look at Uranus in Taurus now, um, where can that liberation occur? I mean, we're speaking obviously for the collective, but
Oh, I think it has everything to do with the traumas that are assigned by any particular culture. And I think there's a larger world culture that has to do with monetary identification, our sense of value and self-worth, and the trauma, particularly around the world, of people who are struggling to survive, just to get food on their plate. The levels of poverty and hunger just in our country, the United States, are on the rise in a first world country that should not have these problems. And so I think the very trauma of sustainability, earth sustainability, personal sustainability, the trauma of our food supply, there's any number of things that you can address with Taurus.
Absolutely. This is so timely. Thank you so much. Have you been to Zion? I'm just going to show some pictures so people can
have not at all of my life. I've been around the United States and I have not been to Zion, and I am so excited. My husband has been there and he will be coming with me, and because it's been a while for him, he being in Zion, but these pictures are stunning. They're so gorgeous.
Well, that's the great thing is, you go through a deep immersion process, and then you can kind of process in nature, talk about the earth. It's good to be close to the earth. So
yeah, it's phenomenal. Do you know what time of year these photos are taken?
I think each one is kind of different. This looks like the fall. We're going to be there in spring, which, the rivers are going to flow, and it's going to be very colorful with bloom. And it shouldn't be too cold or too hot. It's kind of the perfect middle way.
So exciting. That picture of those pools is that's stunning.
And just a few other things, we have entertainment as well. We have a banquet and we have a dance that's organized by Shannon, Gill, and Russell Olhausen, and they've done this in Tucson, and it was spiritually themed. So it's not just about sweating and moving, but it is also about the consciousness of movement and bringing that into our work during that retreat. Other aspects of this is the hotel, it's nested in the mountains. So people can sign up now, and the price will increase in about a month. The other thing is some of the tracks are about to sell out. I mean, we're doing quite well. There's one track in particular that's almost full, and others are getting there. So if there's a track you really like, we usually ask for two options. If your track of choice is full, we can give you, we can place you in another one. But now is the time to really secure your place. Yep. And you obviously have the lower price. The other thing we are also offering is for people to sign up with installment. You're going to have to pay for meals and attendance, which is $405. So you can split that into 2 or 3 payments. Talk about sustainability and Uranus in Taurus. We try to make it as accessible as possible and still get the full-on experience. So thank you so much, Laura, for taking the time here and
thank you,
and for being part of this project.
I'm thrilled. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having me.
Great.